Hello everybody, welcome to another video. It's Josh here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a very budget-friendly mountable DIY video light. And if you've been here before, you would have seen one of my older lights. I'll put a picture right there for you, and I've linked that video in the description below as well as in the cards in the top corner. Before we jump into the video, if you like tech stuff, reviews, DIY, those type of things, please hit the subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. You can also check out my Patreon page if you feel that you want to support this channel. And this is what I've made during the lockdown so far.
You'll need a piece of timber, 3 surface mounted light fittings, a Mobi clip for this tripod thread, some twin flex cable, electrical tape, side cutters, soldering iron, some solder. You'll also need some permanent markers, preferably red and blue. You'll also need a blade or knife of sorts, some masking tape, and a thumbs up to get started. Let's take a closer look at these light fittings. They're pretty cheap plastic light fittings. I wasn't going to drill holes in the back of the timber as this is a lockdown build, and I know that not everyone will have the tools to do this. So we're going to notch out a side in the fitting. It's plastic, it's easy to cut. Just hold your cable up, mark out the spots, and then you can cut these out on those marked lines with your side cutters. When you do this, just be careful not to tear the plastic. Wiggle it backwards and forwards until it breaks out, and then just clean it up with the knife, and then you can check that your cable fits nice and neatly. And then just repeat this process with the other 2 fittings. We now want to start preparing our twin flex cable. You need 3 equal lengths. It's about 15 to 20 centimeters long. Just measure off your twin flex cable and cut them to size. You can then split this cable. As this is not marked cable, we are going to use the masking tape and permanent markers to mark a positive and negative wire. Now that we've super stylishly marked our positive and negative on our cable, you can split the other side, take your wire cutters and strip the ends of the wires. Then we're going to take the soldering iron and solder, and we're going to solder all the ends of the cables so they are prepared to be joined later and also prepared to go into the light fitting. I like to use these Gorilla clamps to hold things as it frees me up to pretty much use 2 hands while soldering. When you're done with the soldering, you should end up with a cable looking like this, and then you want to trim the portion that's going into the light fitting side so that it fits nicely into the little sockets that you're going to screw it down on. I like to also make sure that I give a proper pull test on the crimping of this wire in that socket so that nothing comes out once in place. Now that I'm happy with the pull test, I'm going to repeat this process with the other 2 light fittings. I'm then going to start to figure out roughly where I want them placed and cut my board to size. To make it simple, I went with 30 centimeters, which is the length of a ruler, as most people will have a ruler in their house. I also got a rough idea where I want the lights placed afterwards. I then made sure that my line was nice and straight using the set square. I marked both sides and prepped for cutting. When it comes to cutting, you'll use a saw, but in this case I used my ninja skills and knife. It's now time to put the tripod nut into the timber. I took this from a broken mobile clip mount. I measured out 15 centimeters and made sure I also found the center of the timber from left to right so that I knew where to drill out for the tripod nut. Make sure you have the right size drill bit that matches the exterior size of the nut so that you can get a nice good fit when you put it in. Also make sure that you get the depth right. I used electrical tape to mark off how deep I needed to drill, and then I secured the drill bit. Always make sure to tighten the chuck on all 3 sides. Just take it slow, don't rush as you drill this hole, as you only really get one shot at it. I double checked and checked again to make sure that I got the depth right. To prepare for setting up the nut, I attached it to a Gorilla Pod plate and then got my chemical anchor, which is Pratley Steel Quickset. It works on most surfaces. You just need a pea size of the chemical and the activator. Mix that together and give it a couple of minutes to start activating and working. You can then place it into the hole which you're going to put the tripod nut in, And while I was letting that sit for a bit, I masked up the plate from the Gorilla Pod and also the screw part so that the chemical doesn't get into the screw and the thread, and it also doesn't get stuck to the plate of the Gorilla Pod. Now that it's all masked off, place it into the hole, give it a couple of good presses and bangs, and then let it set.
A few moments later.
It was set nice and strong. I removed the screw and then applied some more chemical just around the surface to give it that extra strength. Now that that's taken care of, it was time to put the light fittings into place. I marked it out with the ruler, put the screws in place and started to screw them in. This is pretty straightforward. Just use common sense and repeat the process for the other light fittings. Now that we finished screwing around, we're going to start preparing the leads to be joined to our longer lead, which will go into this standard wall plug. We're going to gather all the positives together and all the negatives together, and then we're going to start prepping for soldering. I very cleverly forgot to hit record when I was soldering the positives together, but you can see that afterwards it's joined and I do a little pull test on it, and then you can watch me do it on the negative side. Now that the positive lead is successfully joined, I'm preparing the negative leads. I'm taping them together, bunched together nicely, so the other end of the cable which I'm joining onto can meet up quite nicely. I struggled a little bit with this join. As you'll see now, the wire kept on falling down and took a little bit of a while for the solder to get hot, but in the end, after 2 or 3 tries, I eventually got it to stick and I got a really nice connection, and I'm very happy with it. As with any join that you're soldering, make sure it's all connected nicely and that the join is strong. If you're happy, you can start to insulate. I did this with electrical tape. You could use heat shrink, but I don't have access to that now, especially in a lockdown, so electrical tape will do. You want to make sure that you tape up both joins, and this will insulate it from the risk of shorting out, and it will also preserve the integrity of the join. Now that we've got everything wrapped up and insulated, we can start to prepare the other end of the cable for the plug. I marked this with blue. You could also mark it with black, as black or blue is for neutral or the negative. I then prepare this with solder to make sure that it's nice to go into the plug terminal for crimping. And then I did the same thing with the positive side and made sure that end was soldered. I like to trim things to length so that they fit nice and snug when they get crimped down, and makes it for a much neater finish. Right, so it's very important to note which side is the neutral and which side is the live. It should be marked by N and L. You put the blue into the neutral socket, and then you're going to put the live into the L, the positive socket. Make sure you tighten things down and give it a good pull test, and then prepare it neatly and close up the plug. It's now time to clean up the wires on the back. I'm going to use the glue gun and glue them into place. As you can see, I've used that little Gorilla Grip clamp to keep the wire in place, and now I'm gluing down the wires. Again, I might still upgrade this in the future and drill out the holes from the back so that I can connect the wires neatly through, and then maybe put all of these wires into a little electrical box of some sort. But seeing that it's a budget DIY build, this is more than acceptable because you're not there to film your video light. I added some last finishing touches by gluing the end of the cable down to remove any tension, and then it was time to test out the tripod mount. As you can see, this mini tripod screws in nicely and everything is nice and secure. And then it was time to put in the LED globes. These are partially diffused with the smoky lens cover on it, but I'm going to show you how I diffuse it even more. Let's test out if this thing actually works. Success! I want to be able to diffuse this light some more, so using an old shoebox lid and some paper clips, I cut the paper clip in half and glued the 2 halves to each side of the shoebox. I can then adjust this to an angle that I like and attach some diffuser paper to the end of the box, which will hang over the front of the light. I'll show you in the next video clip now. So yeah, you can see I've Gorilla gripped the shoebox on, and This will create like this natural light reflection at this angle, and then I can secure using some masking tape and some diffuser paper over the front, which will help diffuse the light and make it less harsh. This is what the final product looks like. Obviously it's very difficult to film a light, especially using a cell phone, but this is what it looks like with the light on, and I'm very happy with the final product.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. You can tell me what you think in the comment section below. Maybe you've made one of your own DIY video lights. I'd love to see them. Apart from that, I'll see you in the next video. Thing very, very cost and budget be friendly. Cut. That's not acceptable. That is not acceptable.